Cleo, thanks for joining us again. It's always great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And I noticed you didn't use my last name this time during the introduction, so we can smoothly go right into the whole discussion without any hiccups whatsoever.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway, the Solomon Islands, the Pacific Ocean, and the Pacific Island nations. Yeah, every time we have you on, it seems like things get worse afterwards.
Wait, are you saying it's our fault or it's Cleo's fault?
I'm just noticing a correlation. Correlation does not equal causation. But I am noticing a strong correlation.
Do you think things would have been better if we didn't talk about them?
I had no way to prove
that's how
one way or
I
the
solve
other.
the problems in my life. I just don't talk about them, and the problems magically go away.
We have a track record, proven track record right there. All right. So thanks for joining us, Cleo. Everything's going to stay the same.
Everything's great in the Pacific.
Great.
Right. Yeah.
You're on to me. I've been actually, running these CCP operations, so I'd have an excuse to come on and hang out with you. And I was hoping to be up in the Quebec bunker, but clearly that's not the case at the moment. So I'll take what I can. And now that I'm on, I can stop those influence operations that are destroying the countries and just luxuriate in the China Unscripted presence.
Well, I mean, things certainly have gotten quite bad. I'm trying to hold the podcast here. Be quiet. Things aren't good in the Solomon Islands. Tell us more.
Okay, now that is correct. So going back, you've covered this story very well and comprehensively, and thank you, because it's important. It's not just the Solomons. Solomons is tragically, for the people of Solomons, become the case study of how China can weaken and almost destroy a country in the process of taking it over. And they did it really fast. So understanding what happened in Solomons shows you a lot about how China operates, not just in the region, but also even in the U.S. I mean, they're direct parallels for a lot of the operations that they were running there. So what happened? The reason it's such a clear case study is because until about 2019, until September 2019 exactly, Solomons recognized Taiwan. And then there was an election just earlier that year. A new person came in, Prime Minister Sogavare, and he unilaterally switched from Taiwan to China. So we have a starting point for the major overt Chinese influence operations. That's September 2019. And after that, what showed how they operate was the groupings within the country that didn't want that closer relationship with China, and how they were attacked. So the classic case within that case study is the case of the premier of Malaita province, which is the most populous province in Solomons, a man called Daniel Suidani, who you interviewed. He and his leadership, it isn't just him, he was representing the will of his people. He was a very popular elected leader, and the traditional chiefs in about a few months later, in October 2019, put out the Auki Communique, A-U-K-I. That communique, named after the province capital, Auki, says what they want for their province in terms of development, who they thank in terms of their development partners, and it's U.S., Australia, Israel, like all these, everybody. But they say specifically they do not want any more business coming into the province that is linked to the Chinese Communist Party. And they give a bunch of different reasons, including they believe in freedom of religion, and the Chinese Communist Party is systemically atheist. And so that goes against their core beliefs. They know how people of faith are prosecuted and persecuted in China, and they don't want to deal with a country like that. They also don't want their province turned into a police state. All of these things are listed. It's a very interesting document for understanding how people around the world know what the CCP is and know what happens to their communities and their country when the CCP comes in. So what happened, of course, was when they put that out, Daniel Suidani, the premier of that province, became public enemy number one for Chinese, but also for their proxy prime minister, Sogavare, who came in. So then when Suidani got sick, the central government wouldn't provide funding for him to get medical care. He needed an MRI outside the country. Neither would the Australians. Neither did the Americans. Nobody would help him. They literally wanted him to die. He was an inconvenient person because he was standing up to China and being very clear about why. Luckily, what happened was an influential Indian man had heard about it, got in touch with President Tsai's office in Taiwan, and they got him to Taiwan for the medical care. And then he came back. Well, by the time he came back, Sogavari and that Chinese clique had poured a ton of money into his province to try to get the provincial assembly, to vote him out in a vote of no confidence, to get rid of him. That didn't work. The people of Malaita province protested and physically blocked the entrance to parliament. And the police in Malaita said, calm down. Okay, we get it. We don't want violence here. And they went and they talked to the guys who've been bought off by China. And I'm perfectly comfortable saying they're bought off by China because we've seen bank records of money going to all of these people. Like, they're on Twitter, public them. We know who they are. We know some of the amounts that were done through bank transactions. We know the bank account numbers. None of this has been followed up on by anybody, but it's all publicly available now. And so they withdrew because they saw this was going to be a real problem. Now, since then, what happened was there's been a lot of police training, a lot more weapons coming in, including from Australia. The Chinese sent in water cannons. And so now, after kind of a little bit over a year, the pro-Chinese forces in Solomon are better armed. They've spread around a lot more money. They have much better influence operations. And just a few weeks ago, they had another vote of no confidence against Daniel Suidani, and he lost. So he's no longer the premier of Malaita province. And in fact, he's had to leave the country because he and his team are very concerned that, they'll try to get a trumped up charge and throw him in jail.
How have the people of Malaita province responded to this?
So So Suidani is, they knew this was coming. They've been warning for a while. And he didn't want to give those heavily armed pro-Sogavari police, paramilitary basically, an excuse to kill his people. So they did not even attend the vote in Parliament for the vote of no confidence. They didn't want their people to come out and demonstrate. They knew that the position of the police had changed. For the last vote of no confidence, the police were doing their job normally, but now they've been replaced. In fact, one of the main police kind of chiefs was replaced for this new phase. And this new phase, these police are the concern is much more loyal to Sogavari and to the CCP agenda.
And those police actually were trained in China, some of them, right?
Some of them, yeah.
And armed by Australia.
And if I were the Chinese, that's exactly what I do. I try to make sure that the first demonstrators were shot with Australian bullets. That's exactly how they play it. There were riots in Honiara in the capital, and Sogavari got the Australian troops to come in as an excuse to then bring in the Chinese troops, right? So Australia it's either complicit or moronic, but it's not playing a beneficial role at all. And Sogavari, the getting rid of Suidani, of the pro-democracy guy, that's sent a chill throughout the entire Pacific Island region. So there are 4 countries that still recognize Taiwan, and they all have influence operations in their countries that are very similar to this ongoing. So I'm getting calls from people in Marshalls, people in Palau, saying, if nobody will protect Suidani, they're not going to protect me. They're not going to, if we make this stand for democracy in Taiwan and all the things we believe in, but nobody is protecting even the most visible proponent of this in the region, then we're out on a limb, and it's not just our political lives that are at risk.
Well, hey, now, let me push back on that, because the U.S. government, after 30 years of not having an embassy on the Solomon Islands, this month they opened one. So, problem solved, right?
Problem solved. They're good people, and they're trying hard, but I think there might be half a dozen of them. And, this is not, this is really, really deep. I mean, tens of millions in cash are the amounts that I've heard of being spread around Solomon. Solomon's, I can't remember what it is, or 600, 700,000 people. And what happened with the Auki Communique, remember, which said no more Chinese business investment. So what the Chinese did, very smart. And again, this is a way of, I highly recommend studying this case, because it shows you how they operate. They said, okay, we can't run businesses in Malaita, but you know what? We're going to fund a mini hospital. And so they've said they're going to put in this hospital. No, you can't say no to a hospital. And according to Peter Candelaria, who's the son of the first prime minister of Solomons, he's in parliament, highly respected. He's saying that the bribe money is likely being run through that hospital. So they would normally use a local business, logging or fisheries or whatever, to buy off the locals, but they couldn't do it because of the Auki Communique. So they're using this hospital to be a cover for laundering the money into the region. The first public announcement of what that new Malaita government is going to do, now that they got rid of Suidani, is get rid of the Auki Communique.